Can't look at it.
All right.
What do we do?
Hello, boys and girls. So today we're going to be reviewing a little bit about jazz and learning about our friend Louis Armstrong. Now, Louis Armstrong was a jazz musician, and he grew up in the South in Louisiana. So what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about what we know already. So on the sheet of paper that you have, if you could just write down what I know, and then just jot down a couple of ideas of some things that you might know already about Louis Armstrong, if you've heard about him, or about jazz, or even about the South in about the 1920s and 1930s, because that's the time where Louis Armstrong was most popular. So go ahead, take like a minute to write down what you know, and then we'll share together. You might talk about what instrument he's playing. You can see right here on the book cover, you can kind of infer as to what he started playing and what he became famous for. Also, I mentioned that he was from Louisiana. If you know anything popular that happens in Louisiana, you can write about that.
Probably can't read my writing.
I don't have to read your writing. You're going to be able to read it yourself when we share.
Oh, that's even harder. That's even harder.
Think about maybe 2 or 3 things that you can think of, and then we'll share from there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and share with each other, but before we do, we're going to take a space on our paper, and the second thing we're going to write is what I learned from someone else. So that means if you wrote something down that's the same as another person, you don't have to reflect on that. But if you learn something else from what somebody else wrote down, you can write down what they said and what you learned that's different or unique or interesting from what somebody else did. So I'll start. One thing that I know about Louis Armstrong is that he became very popular because he played the trumpet. And the trumpet was his main instrument. And that's what he was known for in jazz. Okay, David, would you like to share out one of your answers?
I wrote that he was an African American.
That is true. Louis Armstrong was an African American. Anybody else want to share?
He had a very, very gruff voice.
That is also true. He had a gruff voice. Can you give us an example of that gruff voice?
I don't think so.
I can.
Hello, Dolly.
That's very good, yes. That gruff voice is what he was actually very well known for in his music when he sang. It was this very like low, deep, and scruffy, kind of a snarly voice. But it was something exciting and new that people in the world hadn't heard before, and so he stood out. Would you like to share out, Ron?
He made numerous, I put episodes, but he made many
records.
Times on TV and different programs.
That is also true. Louis Armstrong, he made many guest appearances on TV shows.
Right.
He made several movie appearances as well, and it's because he was known for that scruffy voice that you were talking about.
It's more scruffy than gruffy, I think it would be.
And
all right,
his
the
lower
next...
lip was, so he had this horn pressed there, so that when he was, of course, they're big lips anyway.
That's right, yeah, he had those big African-American lips that,
That thing hung down on the lower one is always really low.
Right. So the next thing that we're going
to do... Okay.
The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to read a little bit about Louis' history and how he came to be who he was in his prime time of music. So the next space that we're going to do is we're going to annotate or take notes about what we're reading today. So just write down notes. And these will be the notes from what we're going to read today. I'm going to read out loud to you, and you just write down what you hear that you think sounds important. Okay? If you think that Louis Armstrong's dog's name is important to you, then that's good. You can write that down. But that may not be one of the most important facts, because we're learning about Louis Armstrong, not about his dog. So you want to make sure that you write down what you think is important about him and his life.
In other words, what you're putting down here, you're going to get that to some age level or what, to show what we, because you have to go all the way down to about the 4th grade.
Right, you're going to write down what you hear that you think is important. And it's just notes, it doesn't have to be in a complete sentence, but you want to make sure that you can understand what you're writing about, so that when you look back at it, you can understand what we were reading about.
Why you wrote it, yeah.
That's tough.
Alrighty. Louis Armstrong was born in 1901 in a poor black section of New Orleans called Storyville. Now, New Orleans is in Louisiana. We were talking about that before. It was so dangerous in his neighborhood that its nickname was the battlefield, because there were so many fights that broke out there. Many people carried guns or knives wherever they went. There was a lot of crime. It was not easy to be a young African American boy in the early 1900s. Though slavery had ended in 1865, many white people thought blacks were not as good as white people. They were often treated unfairly. Now let's take a little pause right here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what I just said. It was not easy being a young African American. Slavery was ended, but many people thought blacks and whites were not the same. What does that make you think about? What does that make you think about? A lot of times the whites treated the blacks poorly.
The blacks were treated unfair, but that means they were a lower class of people. The
That-
whites figured.
That is true. The whites figured that the African Americans were a lower class of people and that they didn't deserve the same kind of things that whites did.
Right.
We don't know, we just got done with a president that's black.
We're not worried about that.
That's right.
I
These
don't know if he
times,
plays the trumpet or not.
yeah, these times are definitely different, because we have President Obama. He's a black person who's in the White House running our country. So when Louis Armstrong was around, times were definitely different.
Oh gosh, yes.
Nobody that had different colored skin would be allowed near that White House.
No.
And you sat in the back of the bus if you rode the bus too.
That's right. You sat in the back of the bus. This is segregation. This is racism, and it was
I
still
saw
very
that.
popular. Like, even though the slavery had ended and the movement of slavery was over, people still looked at black skin color as a bad thing.
That's right.
Now, just a side note on that, those were considered the Jim Crow laws. The Jim Crow laws, even though slavery ended in 1865, and all of the Americans became free people, free men and women, the Jim Crow laws made it where black or African American people were restricted, like you were mentioning. They were restricted. They couldn't use the same bathrooms. They had to sit in different places on the bus. They couldn't drink out of the same water fountains.
No.
Things were really different in the South, and it carried on for quite some time.
Either all the way down to 1950.
Yep. It was there for a very long time.
Because I was in Nashville